is in there, right there in the back. Sarah's going to collect questions off Zoom. If any audience members would like to ask a question, Brad has some note cards and some pencils and pens. If you just get his attention back there and write down your question, if we have some time at the end, we'll take some audience questions. Each candidate will then receive 1 minute for closing remarks. The order of opening statements has been determined by drawing names from a hat. Christopher Guffey, name was drawn first, and we have them seated in the order of their opening statements. So I'll turn the stage over to Mr. Guffey now.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to thank all of you for just the opportunity to address you this evening and try to answer any questions that we might have. Giving a preacher a microphone and telling him he has 2 minutes never works, but let me give it my best shot. I'll begin by just introducing myself. As he said, my name is Christopher. Chris is fine. Guffey. And I've had the privilege of pastoring Cornerstone Baptist Church here in Sedalia for the last 13 years. My wife, Miss Kelly, and I have made Sedalia our home over these years and began to raise our children, Isaiah, Zariah, and Georgia. Kelly serves as the director of Cornerstone Baptist Preschool, and I am in my 9th season of coaching golf for Smith Cotton High School, just because preachers only work an hour a week anyway, right? I've served in various boards over the past 20 years, including my present membership on the board of Uttermost International, which is providing a high quality education for some 1,300 students in South Asia. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology as well as biblical theology from Southwest Baptist University, a Master's of Divinity and Global Studies from Liberty Theological Seminary, and currently pursuing a doctorate of ministry. Probably the number one question that we have to answer tonight is, why am I running? And so let me just get that out of the way. I've seen firsthand the important role that a community college plays in our community. It offers students an opportunity for a quality education locally without having to assume the debt and cost of many universities. A local college like State Fair helps our communities grow through education and trade training, giving everyone the opportunity to benefit from a skilled workforce. As a high school coach, I've seen up close and personal the opportunities a community college offers to high school students. From early college credits to athletics, State Fair has a great opportunity in front of it. I'm running because I see that opportunity, and I'd like to be a voice for our community in shaping the policies of this wonderful institution, as well as helping to make the decisions on how we move forward in the days ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Amy Brashears, and I also appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight. Thank you for attending, and everybody on Zoom as well. I've lived in Benton County for 41 years, and I'm 48 years old, so moved there when I was 7. My husband David and I farm south of Warsaw on a family farm. We've been married 22 years, and we have 3 sons. Curtis is 18, and he is studying at CTC right now as a senior at Warsaw High School. And our son Benton is a sophomore, and tomorrow he's testing, hoping to get into CTC next year while he's at Warsaw. And then our youngest son, Henry, is an 8th grader at Warsaw. My background is varied. I worked at a bank in Warsaw for many years, and then I became a teacher, a high school business teacher, and wrote grants, exploring careers and that sort of thing, and vocational certification. I became an elementary principal at Warsaw, then I was a high school principal at Warsaw, and now I work for MU Extension, serving Benton and Pettis County as the community engagement specialist, and also those 2 and Henry as an ag business specialist. So the reason I'm running, I think, really is about perspective. I think having seen K-12 education like I have, also being involved in higher ed like I am now, and living in Benton County, but serving Benton and Pettis counties, and even Henry, which is also part of the State Fair service area, gives me a perspective maybe that might be different than others. And if that's something that I could bring to the table, I'd really appreciate the opportunity. I enjoy serving on boards. I've served on the Warsaw School Board and the Benton County Historical Society, Benton County Health Department. So I like working with other people. And I look forward to the opportunity should that present itself. Thank you very much.
My name's Tim Carr, and I'm currently a trustee. I was appointed to the board on April 22nd, 2021. It was to fill an unexpired term of a previous trustee who was elected. I've been married for 25 years to my wife, Amy. She showed up tonight. It's kind of surprised me, so I'm caught off guard just a bit with that. Basically, I was approached 15 years ago to run for the Board of Trustees. Due to some personal issues, job issues, I wasn't able to do that. It just wasn't a good fit. So now I'm 56 years old, and I've been living in Sedalia, Pettis County for 46 years. And with my career in law enforcement and as a juvenile officer, I'm getting paid to give back to the community. And in turn, I wanted to seek a position such as the Board of Trustees, where you're doing it just out of the goodness of your heart, trying to lead in a positive manner, because this college has affected me directly. This college provided me a leaping board from the Smith Cotton High School graduation to State Fair's graduation to CMSU's graduation, UCM now. And in turn, it led me to a multi-year history working in law enforcement and related fields. I've served on many boards. Most of them have been directly related to the law enforcement, and I've also served with our parish council. The options that were available to me for this particular board has been one where it's a learning process. And if someone tells you they can go in and just handle it right off the bat, they're not telling you the truth. And I appreciate the current board for being a guiding hand in directing me on how to properly participate and to function as a trustee for the SFCC.
Hello, my name is Billy Foster. I am originally from Sedalia, Missouri. I have a wife. Her name is Shanta, a 7-year-old. Liam, he loves to play chess, by the way. I'm running for office because I graduated from State Fair Community College, and through lots of educational opportunities since then, I believe in the power of education and how it can change the trajectory of a person's life in a way that it completely changes what they end up doing in life. So I believe in that, and I believe in the mission of State Fair to do that, because I started at State Fair, began a career, and then just use that education as a springboard for everything else that I've done. So maybe we'll get into all that later, but that's who I am.
Thank you. I'm going to do something awkward. I thought we might have 5 people here. So if you guys would like to shift down and be a little bit more comfortable, you can, and I can get rid of this chair here.
Shifting left or shifting right?
I'm shifting right or left. That way it's not like I'm standing right over Mr. Foster. The way it was, I'm kind of standing over his shoulder. This is better. Thank you, guys.
It's great.
Okay. Now I've got an order that we're going to ask the questions of each we're going to ask the candidates each question in, and it'll rotate as we go. Tim Carr is the first up, and our first question is this: what do you see as the most pressing issue facing the college, and why are you the most qualified person to tackle it?
The most pressing issue that we're facing in the college, I think, is every question, every issue that everyone faces, whether it's community college, university, or a business. It's money. We have to generate funds, and to generate those funds, we have to have students. We have decreasing enrollment, and we've been working as a board to try to develop plans and implementations that would help the administrative staff in providing the additional students. If we don't have the students, we don't have the teachers. If we don't have the teachers, we don't have this amazing facility to use to bring to our community.
Thank you. The next person is Mr. Foster.
I would say similar to that, and that just generating income. I think that combined with housing. I mean, when I was a student here, there was that little house out there where the students, where the basketball people were. So I think student housing for athletes and non-athletes will be big, because if you're coming from a small town, that drive back and forth gets to be pretty heavy. So generating income that way, because real estate is where it's at, really. And I think with that as well is developing and helping staff after 2 years of COVID and all the changes. I think just being able to pour into staff and help them to be heard and make those adjustments are essential, especially moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Guffey.
Well, for the most part, I would agree. I want to maybe get a little bit more specific, and it was touched on with enrollment. I think if you talk to different folks here at the school, that's the number one thing that comes up over and over again, because enrollment drives that income, that revenue. And every year since 2014's State Fair has been in a 6% decline in enrollment. And some would say, well, there's a decline in birth rate, and that's true. But if you actually go back to the 2 years that students would be right now, the birth rate only declined 0.8%. And so birth rate's only a small piece of that puzzle. Not only that, but there's an interesting article that was written in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, November the 8th, 2021, by somebody who dived into Missouri specifically and what was going on with enrollment in community colleges and universities in the state of Missouri. And there they found, for example, St. Louis Community College only saw a 2% decline, while the University of Missouri saw a 14% decline. So some people are doing this better than others. And when you hear that number of 6%, that percentage is too high. We might expect some decline in enrollment, but we need to dive into why that is. And there's a number of things that go into that. It's not just one piece of the puzzle. What do I plan to do to fix that? Well, a big part of what the board does is we set a budget, right? And so we need to make sure that our budget is in line with our priorities, which will then help our enrollment.
Thank you. And Ms. Brashears.
Thank you. I think these gentlemen have all given good answers. And what I would add to it is we have a lot of unfilled jobs here in Sedalia and a lot of places. And so I think not only enrollment, but attracting students to what we have and or looking at what else that we might need to offer as we review our offerings and see what those pathways or goals are that the students can meet and move forward. And I will throw out that I think a huge part of that is increasing our presence to the extent that it is possible in especially our local high schools, but also increasing our opportunities throughout our 14 county service region. And that's a tricky thing to balance because you don't want to pull away services from a group that you already serve, especially the taxing district, but also looking for ways to increase that. And I think partnerships are big for that. I think relationships and partnerships are huge. I think that it's relationships throughout the grade school, with the schools, with the parents, with others here in Sedalia, even across community colleges as we look to work together. And I think certainly among the staff, everybody that works for State Fair, also with our community, like those partnerships, those relationships, I think are a foundational piece of staying nimble in this really crazy time for education.
Thank you. The next question will go to Billy Foster first. In your view, what has the college done well over the last 5 years?
I think they've done well. The buildings look awesome. I mean, procurement of support to do what we've done here. I've been to some other community colleges and they definitely don't look like State Fair. We've done well. I think we've done well with that. I think some of the, at least for us moving back, we left for a while, coming back, there's different activities on the campus where the community comes to, and that's good because other than that, other than basketball or something like that, there would be no other connection to come back here. And so I think that's important. And I've seen that there's been an expansion of sports, which is really good because we're surrounded by all these small towns with people that could probably do something with sports if they had a little bit more opportunity. So I think we've done well with that, expanding our sports options as well.
All right, thank you. The next candidate is Mr. Guffey.
Yeah, I think I just mostly echo what Billy just said. Capital improvements here, phenomenal. Growing up in Illinois, Lakeland Community College was our closest college. Some might be familiar with that. And when you walk around this campus, it's amazing what we have. not just in the building, but structurally when it comes to our networking, security. I've gotten the opportunity to speak to several of those individuals and what we offer online. Of course, COVID forced us to really consider those things, but all of that capital improvement is quite amazing, really. And then obviously athletics, we've added a lot. And I know, for example, we added the golf program in the last couple of years, but that brings in more students, but it also means that we have to meet that challenge, right?
Ms. Brashears?
So I'll echo the sports thing. I know shooting sports is one that I think will be really interesting, especially for a lot of rural kids, as well as the breadth and depth that already is there. And I think that's great. The Olin Howard Workforce Innovation Center, I think, is going to be amazing. And I can tell you my children are looking very forward to the completion and being able to take advantage of that. And I think that what that can do for our workforce and the possibilities for great jobs for kids from this area who want to take advantage of that, I'm very excited about. I think we have a lot of good programs that are a catapult to other things that our students want to do. And so that's exciting. I think that State Fair's assets are probably not underappreciated, but everybody's aware and they don't realize what's here on campus. And so that's something I think would be great to increase further awareness of that. I know the college has done a strategic plan. We're still standing after COVID, right? We have a great faculty and staff who's highly invested in this being the best campus that it can be for our students. And so I'm excited for the future, is what I would say.
Thank you. And Mr. Carr?
It's one of those things that when I was thinking about different elements that this college brings to the table, it's a diamond here in West Central Missouri. And the diamond is shown by each and every person that represents the school, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a factory individual that looks to us to provide them the employees. And that's why, again, the Olin Howard Center is so huge to this community. But it's one of those things. I did bring something to just remind me. When I first enrolled in this school, it was 1984. I was in the last building that stood from the original campus in 1968. And this was what they called it. It was Plywood U. And this is no longer Plywood U. This is a professional situation. It's a professional organization. It's a professional place for you and your children, because we have non-traditional students here by leaps and bounds. We have non-traditional and students. So all the programs, all the offerings, the tremendous education that we offer is a godsend to this community and outside of this community.
All right, thank you. We have a follow-up question. Where do you think the college is falling short at the moment? Mr. Foster, we'll go in the same order. Mr. Foster, and then Mr. Guffey, Ms. Brashears, and Ms. Carr.
Falling short. I'm not really sure. I mean, without sitting in and knowing what's really going on, I can't say what's wrong. I would have to, I couldn't really answer that question.
Okay. That's perfectly fine. I mean, you guys can skip if you want to. It's totally okay.
Well, again, I would say somewhat what Billy said in that without having been in those meetings, it's really difficult to answer that question. I would say that the obvious things would be, we need to figure out this enrollment situation. I would say that from a community perspective, we need to do a better job of selling ourselves, making sure that we're broadcasting who we are and what we're offering here, because I do think it is a diamond. And then, from what I've read and, talking to different folks here at the school, it seems like we've got some concerns with housing that we need to address. And so we may have opportunity to get into those a little bit more later, but seems like we need to have some difficult conversations and difficult questions asked about that housing and where we go from here. And because that housing aspect really affects everything that the school does. So.
like these other gentlemen, I can say that I have something where I feel like we've fallen short. I think, as I've said before, that there are some real opportunities as we look ahead in increasing to the extent that we can our presence in high schools, or as Tim said, places that we can find those non-traditional students who, that they all, high school, non-traditional, whatever, want to make their life better. And so I know that we're trying hard. I have no doubt that we are working hard already to do that thing, but I do think that there are some opportunities that exist there. And so I think that's an opportunity area.
My thoughts regarding where we have fallen short. When I talk to one of my juveniles at my office, we discuss hiccups or bumps in the road versus the roads out, or other similar analogies as far as their behavior and what they have to look forward to, and so on and so forth. What I've heard and what I've firsthand have seen is that we've had some hiccups, but it's not that bad. I mean, this college and this staff, whether it be the administrative staff, the individual instructors, the trustees, our continued goal is to succeed. Again, going back to that diamond, it's a diamond. And in turn, we have that diamond, and we want to let everyone know that we have that diamond. I personally believe that this topic is not something that's going to be beneficial to us other than working as we already have been.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Guffey first this time. How do you see your role in supporting the administration, faculty, staff members, students, and other stakeholders at State Fair?
Well, I mean, you have to ask the question, what does a board member do? Board members should not be involved in personnel decisions on a ground level. In other words, we shouldn't be really that involved in, who Coach Paneer is wanting to bring in for his staff. We hire people that we trust and we let them do their job. But who we do work very fundamentally with is the upper level of that administration, specifically with the president, right? And so we work with the president to be able to have a sustainable vision, an attainable vision, and then if we get to a place where those visions are not attainable, not sustainable, then we have to have the difficult questions. Beyond that, what we do is we help write policy, right? That sets the school up, the institution up for success. And we are obviously involved highly with the finances. And so from my perspective, our greatest role is just making sure that when we lay out that vision and that mission, when the president does that and we subscribe to that, believing that's the right direction to go, our highest priority is making sure that we make sure that our money, that our budget reflects that vision, that priority. And where it doesn't, we fix that. So.
And then it actually goes in order. Ms. Shears is next, and then Mr. Carr and Mr. Foster.
So definitely vision and mission, serving as a good board member. I think being prepared, doing your homework, listening to all of the stakeholders, right? So staying with your pulse on kind of the heartbeat of what's going on. I think it's really important to ask questions and have those, not be afraid of those multiple perspectives that help us piece together the whole, right? I think we'd all rather work through it sooner than later. And so as a board to be okay with difficult questions. And I don't sit in on this board meeting, so I'm not saying that the board is not, we don't know what goes on there, but I think that's something, and to not be disagreeable, right? Even if we disagree, we don't have to be disagreeable. And to realize at the end of the day that even if we do disagree, I think the thing we can all agree on is that we want State Fair to be the best it can be. And so those multiple perspectives I feel like are very important. I do think hiring well, mentoring, holding people accountable, supporting and providing opportunities for growth, and especially those employees maybe who would like to try something new at the college. So I'd like to be the college's cheerleader in a really good way while also helping it to be the best it can be.
Yes. Good. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No. Ready?
Go ahead.
The word that comes to mind as I was hearing Chris and Amy talk was micromanaging. That is not our job. And we as trustees have a job, and that job is to hire a president to entrust our concepts and our ideals and where we would like the college to go. And then for that president to implement that throughout the staff, whether it be the executive leadership team or otherwise. And it's our task to review that implementation and make a judgment as to, are we going in the right direction? The school here, with the advent of Zoom and having so many meetings that we couldn't attend because of COVID, the board meetings have all been accessible. And I applaud everyone, Jolynn especially, because she's our contact person, for what they've done. The concept of working together and developing a non-judgmental, non-micromanaging position is sometimes hard for some people. They feel like they have to have their hands and fingers in everything. That is not what I would bring to the table. I trust the decisions that our leadership team make. Don't always agree with them, but I do trust them. And I believe that they're doing it for the best interest of this college, not because they have personal vendetta or personal agenda.
I'm going to repeat the question quickly. How do you see your role in supporting the administration, faculty, staff members, students, and other stakeholders?
I think as far as my role, I look forward to helping to develop initiatives to support the staff and students. So taking what's already there and helping to push that forward. In my role also to think strategically about the sticking points that we do come across. I mean, I like a challenge. So let's look at the challenge, work on it, come back again, look at it again. So I'm kind of a processor in that way. So I look forward to doing that and supporting the new president, but also helping the State Fair continue to thrive. I mean, we've already done well, so continue to help them to run well, miss some hurdles, and maybe think outside the box in certain ways.
Thank you. All right, our next question will go to Ms. Brashears first. What can you do as a board member to make sure SFCC employees, both faculty and staff, are in line with salary equity in the profession, or at a minimum, make sure that they keep up with the rising cost of living?
Yeah, so that's huge. And as we look around us and we know what gas costs just this morning, that's extremely important. And I think that, as we just talked about micromanaging, I think that the board placing an emphasis on the importance of that, but allowing the president and the folks in finance to work on that. Maybe a committee would be appropriate. I'm not really sure, but I think it is essential that the board say, to the extent that we can with the finances that we have, we will stay competitive on salaries and employee benefits and all those sorts of things. And so I would say it just has to be a point of emphasis, and it has to be something that's an ongoing thing. You can't just do it once and stop. As we know, gas prices are changing every day. So it's something that from certainly year to year, but even at sometimes maybe more importantly than that, it would have to be looked at again. So an area of emphasis, talked about at board meetings, I would think, as a part of a financial report. How are we doing on this, and where are we lacking? Maybe we're doing really well in an area, but maybe there's another area that we need to shore up. So I think just making sure that it's emphasized would be my idea about that.
Mr. Carr.
The concept that comes to my mind when I heard this question was, I think every person in here has a budget at home. I believe that everyone wants to manage that budget to the best of their ability. We have the same situation here at this college. We have individuals that spend hours after hours going through what our numbers are and the projection of what our numbers are going to be. It's a projection, but it's an educated projection. And keeping staff on board is vital. But like I said earlier, if we don't have students, we can have the world's best instructors. We don't have students. So we have to focus on our kids. At the same time, we have to focus on our instructors. And lastly, we have to focus on the tools that they're going to use in real life. And that's why the Owen Howard Center is so important. That's why the other areas that we're working on and work with, the nursing program, number 4 years in a row, #1 in the state. I think so. So we have tools here. We have good people using those tools, and we want to continue that path. So that's what I foresee. And I believe that as our kids come to school, come back from COVID, get online programs, and we've developed quite an online program, I think that the sun is going to shine even brighter for us.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Question to do with compensation, right?
Yes, the question was, what can you do as a board member to make sure SFCC employees are in line with salary equity or keep up with rising cost of living?
Yeah, so my wife's an HR manager, so she would say do a what they call it, a compensation survey. So either you have to hire somebody to do that and just find out what that is and then sweeten the pot. So whether that's with compensation or training or development or whatever it is, just make sure you're on level with everyone else and then make it better. Maybe with some intangible things. So.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Guffey.
Staff salaries are a hard topic. And I think especially during COVID, a lot of folks have had to ask difficult questions about those things, including churches. You had to ask questions about, what are our priorities? How do we value these positions? What do we get in return for those positions? So I think you enter into a difficult subject matter. What I would say is a couple of things. Number one, the worst hire you make is a bad hire. So when you get good people, we need to take care of them. We need to incentivize them to stay with us. We don't want to have a constant overturn. The primary role of the board, obviously, in setting the budget is going to, be intricately involved in making sure that those salaries are in line. We can do that in a lot of different ways. We can look at studies that have been done. As Billy said, we can have an HR person help us get those figures for us. But then also we have to be willing to have, difficult questions about, what staff we need and whether those staff might be great, but do they align with our priorities of where we're going as an institution and a school? And sometimes that's tough, but the way forward is always making sure that our priorities are incentivized, that our priorities are where we put our money, and that includes in our staff, and that means making sure we take good care of the good folks that we have.
All right, thank you. The next question will go to Tim Carr first. How can we make the college a bigger part of our community? In other words, how do you plan to increase SFCC's presence in our community?
The task that our new president is going to face is going to be putting themselves as the face of this community. Every person that's employed here is a face of this college in our community. Mary may be more so than others because she does a great job with our foundation, but we all represent State Fair. We all are people who are advertising. Going back, again, this is the diamond. It's pretty easy to sell a diamond if you have a diamond. Others don't have what we have here. So the advantages that we bring to the table are so much greater than what a lot of other smaller campuses or campuses our size even commit. When I first enrolled here, like I said, I was dodging water coming through the ceiling. They had buckets on the floor, so in turn, my main objective, it was affordable. I had a good education and it was affordable. So if I had to dodge a water bucket, I'm going to dodge a water bucket because in turn, I can make this happen. I can work through this and I'm going to get a good education, which I did. So sacrifice cuts many different ways, but you provide, again, this diamond of a college and the campus that we have. I would venture a guess that the people I've talked to, this is a win-win situation.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
I think that the website's great. I mean, I've looked at it multiple times. I think as far as connecting with the community engagement is going to be the major piece. as we say, boots on the ground, but really fully engaged in the community. Whoever the president is and other faculty will need to be present and be at things. I guess you could say like a mayor, I don't know, but just be representing the college. I also think that, I mean, it's very expensive, but you've got the digital space with Google and AdWords and Facebook. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that are out there that are all digital that reach everywhere. Google does have grants, and there's a lot that could be done in that area that's highly engaging. There's tours. I believe that just with some of the things that I've tried to do with the community is to connect manufacturers to kids and kids to schools. So I think being able to engage the college with people that are just kind of walking the streets, if you will, that are in junior high, just to introduce them to the school. I know most companies, they're starting 15 years back to make sure people are ready for when they get to that age. So backtracking maybe to high school and freshmen and really engaging them in the school and what's available to them and really helping to cast vision for what's possible. Because if you get a vision for what's possible, then you'll do some different things. So I think just being more fully engaged with the community would be a really big thing.
All right, thank you. Mr. Guffey.
Yeah, I think great answers already been given. I think, we can talk marketing. We can talk about just making sure that we're putting ourselves out there and saying what's going on. I think it's been an enlightening experience for me over the last couple of months. Even though I was somewhat familiar with the college, being here for basketball games and things like that, and working with some students that did A+ and things like that. It's been an enlightening experience for me, and I'm thankful for State Fair being here in Sedalia. That said, we need to continue to strengthen our relationship with local high schools because that's a big piece of how we get students not only in the future, but also while some of them are still in high school as they are working on those college credits in advance. So that's a big important piece. The president, plays a really fundamental role. They're really the face of the institution. And so they play a really fundamental role. But me personally, as a board member, I have a responsibility to talk to the community. When Sedalia 200 was going through the process of hiring a new superintendent, I reached out to a board member. We are your voice, right? And so because of that, we have an opportunity to speak about what's going on at the college and make sure people are aware of that and understand what's really taking place and how good it is.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brashears.
So I think certainly immersing in Sedalia, both for the new college and for the existing board members and perhaps if there's some new ones, is key. I think wherever we go, we are the face of that. And I think just to have our ears and eyes open for opportunities, possible relationships, partnerships. I think also I would say that I think we ought to do a small town tour. I think that there are a lot of small towns, and Chris talked about high schools, definitely high schools as well, that it would be great to get out and get in and hit those coffee shops and the places people gather. And as the president, maybe as a board member, we take the president around, or however it works out. Maybe it's some employees that we hook up with and go, but just sort of hit the road and go see people and let them know that we're here on behalf of State Fair and it's a pleasure to serve you. And we appreciate your tax dollars. And we'd like to know how we can do more and serve you better and talk about the great things that we're already doing and some of the plans for the future. I think there's some easy wins in doing some of that, just getting out and going to see all of our communities in our entire taxing district.
Great, thank you. We have one follow-up to that question. So we'll start back with Mr. Carr. What role do you feel SFCC plays in the community, or what role do you feel SFCC plays in community and economic development in this region?
That's huge. And my personal example was my family moved here in '76, and my dad was looking for employment, gainful employment to raise a family. He opted to go to night school in the machine tool and technology program ran by the late Kurt Salmon. And it was that program that propelled him into becoming a machinist with Gardner Denver. So, when I think about State Fair and when I talk about State Fair, I really like to personalize things because I can spew out of a book. I can say something I see on a website, but unless you actually experienced it, you truly don't have that same connotation as far as what you're talking about, in my opinion. The availability of our services within this community is huge. The CTC program, huge.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
I think as far as connecting with the community, being able to work with manufacturers to help them to connect with the school, which also helps them to connect with potential employees that they have. I mean, I think it's great if you can go to a school, know you finished your education, you can go right into a solid job and start a career, not have to do more education in order to work there. So I think with the various businesses we have here, being able to foster those relationships and also to help people to kind of onboard a little bit easier. So that partnership with the community, I think, would be an important thing.
Thank you. I got mixed up. Mr. Guffey.
Yeah, I think, first of all, we're one of the larger employers in the area. And so we already make an impact by providing jobs for our community. But second of all, as has already been talked about, we are providing the future labor force. And the better skilled that labor force is, the better we do our job in education, the better that community is going to be, because they're going to have better workers filling those positions. I think maybe one area we could consider or need to look at a little bit is how do we help connect some of these local employers with some of our students as they're graduating. I think we do a pretty good job in some areas, but I think there are other areas where we could expand. And again, without being in all those discussions, I don't know what all those areas are, but for example, we've helped at the church a number of folks get some jobs in networking and things like that. We have a wonderful networking program here at State Fair, and so just helping some of these students find employers and vice versa.
Thank you, Ms. Shears.
So I see workforce and economic development and State Fair as literally left and right hands, like working together constantly. They're molding, they're listening to each other, they're finding ways to serve each other. They just really shouldn't exist without each other. And I don't think they do. I think they're working very strongly together. And so I think more opportunity to do that better. As has been said, I think it's really critical that we're in our high schools. And I would even say, I think upper elementary is not too young. I think our 4th and 5th graders could be exposed to some of the careers and the possibilities that exist. And they don't have to be long exposures, but just to make them and their parents aware that this is a possibility, that there's a vision for your future, and it's this, and it's good, and you can do it, and you can do it close to home, and you can have the kind of life that you want to live. We have a lot of kids I know that are in those situations, and I do think that it's our job as the college to go make that happen.
All right, thank you. Our next question will go to Mr. Foster first. What can we do to make sure that the name State Fair Community College is associated with a high-quality education that prepares students for transfer and/or employment?
I think we can. My mom taught here for 25 years, and at that time, State Fair was known everywhere as far as for nursing as the top. I mean, you had a waiting list to get in, and I think it was because the quality of the teachers, the quality of the education, and that's what drew people here. They knew they could come in, like as I said a minute ago, they could come in, do well, and launch out. I think that's important, whether it's welding, home building trades. I think that is absolutely essential that we continue to develop our programs to where they're at the top of the edge, that they're always progressing, always looking at things, always getting better, because usually when we stop thinking and innovating, we end up dying. So I think just continue to look at our programs, elevate ourselves, put ourselves in a place where we're at the top of the list, and I think we can continue to do well.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go to Chris Guffey next.
Specifically for a board, what a board does again is policy, working with the president, the upper administration, and budget, right? So we are not involved or shouldn't be involved on the ground level in a lot of the hires of personnel with the educators and stuff. What I would say as a school or as an institution, as a college, is we need to hire the best educators, the very best we can. And so how do we do that? Well, we make sure that we allocate the resources that are available to our administrators so that they can go out and procure those people, those talented people. And one of the things I think that, most successful people do really well is they surround themselves with other really smart people, with successful people, with people who are good, maybe even stronger in areas that they're weaker. And so one of the fundamental things we do as a board is we just support our administrative staff, and we provide them with the resources necessary for them to surround themselves with strong leaders and good people and educators and so on and so forth, so that we provide a high quality education.
Thank you, Ms. Shears.
Would you repeat that question again? I wanted to make sure I got all the pieces.
What can we do to make sure that the name State Fair Community College is associated with a high-quality education that prepares students for transfer and/or employment?
Okay, so I think, as Chris said, the highest quality staff that you can find, excellent administration, funding to support professional development, and the supplies and the technology and all those things that we need. I know that there are accrediting bodies, so it would be important to stay on top of whatever accreditations that we need. I think it's also important to be looking and seeing what's out there that we could be doing. So in addition, bringing in pieces to the programs that we already have, but also there might be some new programming that we need to be looking at. And then I think the relationships with those people who hire, or relationships with the institutions that our students would go to next, making sure that we help them here to get all their ducks in a row, so that whatever that next step is, that they're doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Carr.
Give that to me one more time. Sorry.
It was a lot. What can you do to make sure that the name State Fair Community College is associated with a high-quality education that prepares students for transfer and/or employment?
Well, on a short note, I think we're already there. This community knows what they're getting from State Fair Community College. We have persons who graduated that live overseas that represent, like I said, I represent. I don't think I turned out too bad. The community at large here locally, they want State Fair Community College to be a partner. And Mary could easily talk about the fact that the donations she's been able to collect from the businesses in our community for the Olin Howard Center, that speaks volumes to the fact we're there. We just have to keep going. And I believe that the staff that we have in place, I believe that the leadership that we have in place and we're looking for with the new president, I think that we're going to continue. We're only going to get better. So I'm very proud of State Fair. I'm proud of what they gave me. And I believe that we're there.
Thank you. Our next question is going to go to Chris Guffey first. If the board makes a decision that is questioned by the campus and community, what do you believe is the best way to respond to concerns?
Well, I'm going to assume that the question is directed, just to the board. And so what I would say is that it's never a good thing when a board is openly, publicly communicating in a way that puts our administration in anything other than a positive light. Whether it's a chain of command in a military or in a business, you can have disagreement, but there's a time and place to have those disagreements. And one of the things we like to say, and for example, our teams at our church, when we sit down to make a decision, is this is the place where we sit and discuss, fuss, and cuss. And when we walk out of here, we're all going to act like we were in agreement, even if we weren't. And that doesn't mean that, that I have to walk along blindly. When you elect a board member, their responsibility is to vote their conscience and vote according to the priorities of the community that elected them to that position. But as a board member, I will never put an administrator in a negative light, whether it be somebody on campus or off campus for that matter. That's just not our responsibility. And quite frankly, there's just no place for that.
Thank you. Ms. Shears?
Yeah, so the person whose job it is to speak on behalf of the board is the board president, and it's not anyone else's job. And so as individual board members, it would be inappropriate for us to speak on behalf of the board. I do think, as we talked about earlier, we are listeners to the public, and I think that that there's nothing wrong with listening to what people have to say and what their concerns are. I think that's important, but definitely I, as an individual board member, would not be speaking on behalf of the board.
Mr. Carr?
Well, our board president had to leave. I'm getting ready to leave myself. We had some trustee work to do tonight, so I apologize for that. I'm going to have to leave shortly. The concept of speaking for the board, the hardest part of explaining why we have limited ability to discuss things boils down to it's the law regarding different elements of what we have to do. If you're in closed session, you can't talk about it. Now, of course, what does that usually mean to someone who's going to be skeptical? Well, you're hiding something. And, you know, how you can't get past that. You know, years ago at State Fair Community College, I had an instructor, Foster McGuire. He said, Tim, you can't argue with a drunk and you can't argue with emotions. You're never going to win. And in turn, he was right. So our board, we do use Randy as our primary person that speaks on behalf of the board. When he's not available, our vice president is Patty Wood. She does the same thing. She will speak on behalf of the board. So in turn, we don't sit in the room and just, you know, eat it or decide, well, we're going to leave out of here with this unified front, because that's not what I think the citizens want. I think the citizens want us to be true to what they expect as far as votes. So to have this preconceived notion of what we're going to do and we're going to have this kumbaya as we leave a boardroom, I don't believe in that.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
Could you repeat the question?
I will. If the board makes a decision that is questioned by the campus and community, what do you believe is the best way to respond to concerns?
I think is if something is brought up by the community, I think that we would just have to step back and listen, understand the issue, that what's the problem with the decision, then get amongst ourselves and find clarity. I mean, there's that whole problem solving solution. You got to find out what the problem is. How can we, what's wrong with the problem? How can we fix it? What's misunderstood? And then amongst the board, figure out what we need to adjust if necessary, and if not, clarify the position. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we'd be speaking out. We would be dealing within ourselves.
Okay, thank you. We have a follow-up to that question that's a little bit more specific. Last week, the SFCC Board of Trustees elected to decline the Presidential Search Committee's recommendation for 3 finalists for the next SFCC president, and instead chose to review all 5 semifinalists. What is your reaction to this, and how would you as a trustee have approached this situation? And we'll go in the same order, Mr. Guffey first, and then Ms. Shears.
Gee, thanks. I suppose my answer to that question would be that I don't have enough information. I am not engaged in those conversations. I don't know what has been said behind closed doors. I think as a rule of principle that transparency is always the best. And so, you know, you would have to get to the heart of that question and why there's some concern and why that question's being asked. As far as having a personal opinion about that, I can only speak from what I've seen as a community member. And so far, what I've seen as a community member is a lot of transparency. I've seen a lot of information in the newspaper. I've heard from coaches, instructors, and others who have said they've had opportunity to meet with different individuals who are applying for the position. Generally, a board lays out a process by which they make these people available and they tell them how they're going to be hiring. If what has transpired was inconsistent with the process that was laid out in the beginning, then that's a problem. However, if it's not, then I would just trust them to continue to be transparent and open with their community as they go through this process.
Thank you, Ms. Shears.
I'll agree with Chris that transparency is always important. I think we can also, we learn as we go. And so sometimes we can, we set things in place or we think we've got everything done. And maybe in retrospect, we might have communicated differently or done something in a different way. So I have not sat in a trustee seat. I know that ultimately they are responsible for hiring the president, and that is a huge responsibility. And so I will just say that I do think transparency, and I think, as Chris said, planning and implementing are important. And I will say that I do know they have a big job to do, and I have not sat in that seat.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
It kind of goes back to my response from just moments ago. The concept of what was discussed in our board meeting was done so in closed session, which in turn directly applies to the sunshine laws of the state of Missouri. So in turn, the problem that I've heard or has been expressed is that the board just totally discarded the search committee, and that's not true. Every person the search committee put forward is on the final push, if you will, for the position. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, you can have a disagreement, you can have an argument. I disagree with the transparency in certain issues. Nursing, hospitals, doctors, they can't be transparent because they have HIPAA laws. I can't be transparent with a lot of my juveniles because of the confidentiality. So yeah, okay, it would be wonderful if we could have total blanket transparency, but that's not real life.
And finally, Mr. Foster.
And I think you mentioned how would I feel about that? Feel anything. I would just assume that they made the decision based upon the information that they had in front of them. So I would just have to trust that they made the right decision for a reason, however that played out and worked out, and trust in the process, but also trust that that they would be forthcoming with clarifying information if necessary.
All right, thank you. We have one final question before closing statements. I want to be respectful of Mr. Carr's time. Are we still in good shape?
It's getting close.
It's getting close. Okay, so is it all right with everybody if Mr. Carr answers first? Okay, thank you. The board's decisions affect the college, the community, and multiple other stakeholders, I think, as we've all, been discussing the last hour. How will you ensure that the board's actions are transparent?
Well, like I said, there's certain elements of what we do, what we're entrusted to do, that falls underneath the Sunshine Law. I know that I can't quote it, but I can sure look it up. It's under statute 610. And in turn, divulging that information is a violation, and it's a criminal violation. So in turn, pushing for us to do something criminal, is that really what you want from a trustee? I wouldn't think so. But nonetheless, we are transparent. We have Zoom for all of our board meetings. The only thing that is not transparent are the closed sessions, which every board that I've ever belonged to has closed sessions to discuss employees, land purchase, or other. There's three, if I remember correctly, off the top of my head. Nonetheless, you can't break the law trying to be transparent. That doesn't make sense, and that's not applicable in my life, because I'm sworn to uphold the law. So in turn, I don't know if that's the answer that whoever was looking for, probably not. But reality, truthfulness, you can't be blanketly transparent. That's just not real. That's not the world that we live in.
Thank you, Ms. Shears.
So absolutely, there are things that cannot be known, that you would be violating your duties as a board member. But there are many things that can. And so I think approaching things as in we're all on one team, we're all cheering on State Fair, everything that we can share and work together on and get input on, that should be a goal, a priority, a high priority. And I think the way that we do that is is we share information and we talk about things and we invite input. And as Tim says, board meetings are open. So that is evidence of transparency. And I think I think it's to go the extra mile to be transparent so that we're mindful of it. How are we being transparent? How do our supporters, our stakeholders, our taxpayers, our students, our staff, how are we getting information out to them about this to make sure that they know what they need to know and that they can share with us what we need to know?
All right, thank you, Mr. Guffey.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would expect us to break the law. And I don't think that's what anybody refers to when we talk about transparency. I think transparency is just a matter of being open, being able to communicate with folks. Access is a big piece of that. There's the simple things that the college already does, which is make board meetings available, whether that be through public attendance or through Zoom. Of course, those matters which are discussed in closed session have to remain there. But I think just board members being accessible to their community, it goes a long ways when people believe that you actually have their priorities in mind. And we must not forget that it is an elected position. And so we are being entrusted with a responsibility to reflect the priorities of our school or of our communities, not just Sedalia, but all of our communities, right? In this college through this board. And so just being accessible, being available for folks to be able to come and talk to us and ask questions, to be able to bounce ideas off, to hear concerns, and just to be able to work with them through whatever confusion they may have. Sometimes it's as simple as just not really understanding all the facts. And so just serving the college in that way by being able to communicate with folks and being available.
All right, thank you, Mr. Foster.
I remember being in class with PC Thomas. It was a public relations class, and he talked about how sometimes in situations like this, being able to say something was important. So as time progresses, things fester. So I think just as was said here, though there are things you can't say, there are things you can say. And I think to be very clear, to say the things you can say, explain processes or explain processes, and then also clarify perceived issues that don't violate any, protocols. Being clear, and that builds trust, that helps build, and whatever perception are there for a reason. So, doing our best to perceive or have a perception that we're being honest and clear and not trying to hide something. So, but even though you can't say everything, there are things you can say. So I just think being clear with that.
Okay, thank you.
Want a rebuttal? I thought you offered rebuttals, did you not? Or is it not rebuttals to the?
Oh, well, we offer follow-up questions sometimes, but I don't know. We hadn't made any allowance for rebuttals. No, it's not something I
Okay,
had
that's
thought
fine.
about. I am going to give you a minute for closing statements, though.
Okay.
And is that sufficient? You guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. So now what we're going to do is transition to closing statements and give each candidate a minute to summarize their thoughts and maybe rebut things that they would like to as well. So I'll let Mr. Carr go first.
The closing statement I'm going to make is going to be a little bit different than what I initially had planned to do, because addressing the elephant in the room is this topic that we were being secretive and we didn't follow protocol. We didn't do all these things. And I don't want to be the person who doth protest too much, but you cannot release any information when you're in private session. You can't. That's just the way it is. You can announce it. You can announce as Jolynn does. She types up our announcement that goes to the media. So in turn, I want to be that person who's going to represent you, who's going to follow the college and be the person that actually takes care as best I can of the students, the faculty, and provide them with the tools that they need for us to continue being successful. I need your vote, and I would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carr. Mr. Foster is next in our lineup this time. Final statement. Yes, please.
I look forward to just being as a graduate of State Fair Community College and furthered education. I look forward into being a part of the team to help further students, prepare them for the future, help give them a solid foundation, maybe even a career. Like they don't, I mean, I went to trade school first to pay my way through education. So I believe that State Fair has that potential and power to really impact someone's life at the ground level that can propel them forward. So I look forward to being part of that team. So appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Guffey?
I think coming out of the last 2 years of a pandemic, community colleges, universities, businesses, organizations, institutions across the board have unique challenges that are in front of us. And I think that those that are embracing those challenges as opportunities are succeeding, and those who are afraid of those challenges are not going to succeed. And I think those numbers are borne out. I think the number one issue in front of us as a college is enrollment. It really seems to be the driving force behind so many other things. And I think we need to dive into that. We need to figure that one out. Because as I referred you to an article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, I could refer you to another one in Inside Higher Education magazine. Missouri is doing better than the nation, and yet State Fair Community College is doing worse than the national average. And so that means we really ought to ask some sincere, difficult questions. And I believe that my unique experience and background gives me an opportunity to be able to speak clearly on those issues in the days ahead. And so be my joy and privilege to be your vote, to be your voice on this board for the next 6 years.
Thank you. Ms. Brashears?
So thanks for attending today. I'm excited for the future of State Fair because I think we have 4 really passionate, well-qualified people who are excited to serve, and that is just the best of American democracy, in my opinion. I have some background. I've got some work experience. I have served in Pettis and Benton County. I think that's a unique perspective. And I think it's all going to be about relationships. So whether it's we build enrollment through relationships in the high school and with non-traditional students, with superintendents and manufacturers. So I think it's relationship. I think it's perspectives. And I think it's definitely working as a team, all of us on Team State Fair. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'd appreciate your vote.
I want to thank all the candidates for coming tonight. We really do appreciate it. And I think everybody on campus appreciates this event. I apologize to people if I didn't ask your questions. I had many more questions up here than I was able to ask due to time. So I had to skip several that we had picked out ahead of time even. But this will be up and available. Sarah, I'll have a link at some point. It'll be recorded so people have an opportunity to watch it over the next month. The election's on April 5th. Make sure you guys go vote. And isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay. The election's on April 5th, so make sure you get out and vote. And everybody have a nice evening. Thank you again for coming.